I was 15 when my parents told me they wouldn't pay for my college. A single cardboard box, soaked through with water I never saw coming, and suddenly my future was decided. 5 years later, they stood in my childhood living room watching the evening news, faces frozen in disbelief as my name appeared on the screen, tied to a statewide recognition they hadn't expected to see. It wasn't something they'd planned for or helped build. They had spent those years focused on my sister, celebrating her path, funding her future, believing they'd chosen wisely. Hi, I'm Jasmine, 28, from Ohio. This story begins with a family heartbreak that changed everything, but it ends with a moment of pride and quiet triumph I'll never forget. I remember that garage like it's burned into my memory, though it's been years. Our two-car garage in suburban Ohio, stuffed with holiday decorations and forgotten furniture. But that Saturday morning felt different, heavier somehow, like the air itself knew what was coming. I was 15, wearing an old sweatshirt with paint stains, my hands dusty from moving boxes my parents said needed organizing. Mom and Dad had asked me to clear space near the back wall, their voices casual, routine, not realizing or not caring what I'd find tucked beneath the winter coats. The box wasn't labeled. Just brown cardboard sealed with yellowed tape that crumbled when I touched it. I lifted it carefully, heavier than expected, and set it on a higher shelf where the ceiling sloped. Somewhere safe, I thought. Somewhere dry. I finished the job, swept the floor, checked it off the list. Then I went inside and forgot about it completely. Sunday morning arrived with a sound I'll never forget. My father's voice, sharp and broken, calling my mother's name. Not angry yet, just shattered. I ran downstairs in my pajamas, heart already pounding, and found them standing in the garage doorway staring at the shelf I'd reorganized. Water dripped from the box in slow, steady drops. Dark stains spread across the cardboard like a bruise. The pipe above it had been leaking all night, silent and relentless, and everything inside was destroyed. My father pulled the box down. The bottom gave way. Photos spilled out, warped and stuck together, faces I couldn't recognize anymore. VHS tapes clattered to the concrete, labels bleeding ink, plastic cases cracked and useless. These were the only copies, my mother whispered, her voice barely audible. The only recordings we had of her. Her. My grandmother. The one who died when I was 7. The one whose voice I could barely remember. I started apologizing before I could even process what I'd done. The words poured out desperate and broken. I offered to pay for restoration, to find specialists, to do anything, fix anything. My mother looked at me with something cold and final in her eyes. Well, she said, her voice flat and deliberate. I guess we won't be paying for your college then. The garage went silent. Even the dripping stopped. I waited for Mom to smile, to say she didn't mean it, or to tell me she was exaggerating, to say something that would make it not real. She didn't. My father folded his arms. That's when I understood. Mistakes in this house weren't forgiven. They were filed away, held against you, turned into sentences you'd serve for years. And I had just destroyed the most irreplaceable thing they owned. My sister, Angela, stood behind them in the doorway, watching. She didn't say anything. She didn't have to. And for the first time, a question I'd never allowed myself to ask settled in my chest. Would they have punished her like this if it had been Angela who made the mistake? We came into the world together, but Angela almost didn't make it. The umbilical cord wrapped around her neck during delivery, and for 3 terrifying minutes, she didn't breathe. My parents held her like she was made of glass after that, like one wrong move might shatter what they'd almost lost. I learned early that love in our house came with invisible rules. When Angela spilled juice on the carpet at 7, Mom knelt beside her and whispered, "It's okay, sweetheart. Accidents happen." When I knocked over a vase that same year, Dad's voice went cold. "You need to be more careful, Jasmine. Think before you act." The pattern repeated itself in 1,000 small ways. Angela forgot her homework. Mom wrote a note to the teacher, sweet and apologetic. I forgot mine once. Dad made me call the teacher myself and explain my irresponsibility. Angela stayed out past curfew. They were relieved she was safe. I came home 15 minutes late from the library, grounded for a week. By 15, I'd become the easy child. The one who didn't need reminding, who cleaned without being asked, who kept her room spotless and her grades flawless. I told myself it was fair. Angela had almost died. She needed the gentleness. I was stronger. I could handle the firmness. For 3 weeks after the garage incident, I held on to hope. Every morning I woke up expecting Mom to soften, to take back her words. I scrubbed counters until my hands burned, kept my grades perfect, stayed invisible and useful. Every small success felt hollow, a shield against a punishment that made no sense. Angela floated through the house like nothing had happened, laughing in the kitchen, practicing piano in the living room. Her presence, effortless and light, was a reminder of what I was not. Their favorite, the golden child, the one who never broke anything precious. Then one evening they called us downstairs. Mom and Dad sat across the dining table, hands folded like they were about to negotiate a business deal. Angela slid into the chair beside me, confused. I felt my stomach drop. "We've made a decision about college," Dad said. The air went thin. "Angela, you'll be fully funded. Tuition, housing, meal plans, everything you need." Mom's voice was steady, practiced. "We want you to focus on your studies without financial stress." Angela's eyes flicked to me, then away. "Jasmine," Dad continued, "you'll be financing your own education. No cosign loans. No safety net. No help." The word hung there, sharp and final. "Actions have consequences," Mom added. "We hope this teaches you responsibility." Angela stared at her hands. She didn't argue. Didn't ask if this was fair. She just sat there, silent, accepting her reward while I accepted my sentence. I wanted to scream that it was an accident, that I'd already apologized 1,000 times, that this punishment didn't fit the crime. Instead, I nodded. "I understand," I whispered, because somewhere deep down I believed them. I believed I deserved this. The moral line had been crossed, but I was the only one who felt it. Angela's acceptance letter to USC arrived in April, thick and embossed. Mom screamed. Dad opened champagne. They took her shopping for dorm bedding, spent weekends touring campus online, posted photos with captions like, "So proud of our girl." My acceptance to Bowling Green came in a thin envelope. I opened it alone in my room and whispered congratulations to myself. Move-in day for Angela was an event. They rented a van, drove cross-country, stayed in hotels. Facebook flooded with photos, Angela grinning in her dorm, Mom arranging her desk, Dad carrying boxes up 4 flights of stairs. I moved myself in 3 weeks later. Borrowed plastic bins. My sedan packed so tight I could barely see out the back window. No photos. No family weekend planned. Angela studied marketing and strategic communications, glossy brochures, networking galas, study abroad options. I chose elementary education with a focus on literacy and special education. Partly because I genuinely loved teaching, loved watching struggling kids finally understand. Partly because it was what I could afford with scholarships and survival. I worked everywhere. Babysat on weeknights. Substitute aide on weekdays. Weekend tutor at the library. Summer camp counselor when school let out. I studied at midnight after 8-hour shifts, textbooks propped against my knees, coffee going cold beside me. I sent updates home. Made dean's list. Got accepted to student teaching. Received a scholarship for academic excellence. The responses came slow and thin. Good. Nice. Sometimes just a thumbs-up emoji. Meanwhile, Angela's posts flooded the family group chat. Sorority mixers. Spring break in Miami. Marketing internship interviews. Every single one got paragraphs from Mom. Heart emojis from Dad. We're so proud. The gap widened with every passing semester. Financial punishment had become something worse. Emotional erasure. Angela's graduation announcement came in May. Within hours, flights were booked. Mom bought a new dress. Dad reserved a hotel downtown. They coordinated dinner reservations, planned which friends to meet, debated whether to rent a car or Uber. The ceremony was everything. Front row seats. Professional photos. Mom crying into tissues. Dad's arm around Angela's shoulders as she posed with her diploma. The posts came fast: Facebook, Instagram, the family group text. So proud of our girl. 4 years of hard work paying off. 1 week later, my graduation was scheduled. Less than an hour from their house. 43 minutes door to door. I waited for confirmation. Checked my phone between shifts, during lunch breaks, before bed. Thursday. Friday. Saturday morning. The text came at 8:47 a.m., an hour before the ceremony. We're exhausted from all the travel. You understand, right? I stared at the screen. Told myself they'd come late. Show up for photos at least. They wouldn't miss this. Not completely. I put on my navy gown, draped the white stole across my shoulders, fastened the summa cum laude cords. Drove to campus alone. The gymnasium buzzed with families. Balloons. Flowers. Cameras flashing everywhere. When they called my name, Jasmine Marie Thompson, elementary education, summa cum laude, I scanned the crowd instinctively. The family section gleamed under fluorescent lights, rows of metal chairs catching the sun from high windows. Every seat empty. I smiled for the photographer anyway, gripping my diploma so tight the edges bent. Around me, graduates collapsed into their parents' arms. Siblings screamed congratulations. I stood alone, forcing my face into something that resembled joy. Walking to my car afterward, I watched families spill into the parking lot. Laughter. Hugs. Reservations at nice restaurants. I sat in the driver's seat, hands on the steering wheel, phone face up on my lap. The text never came. The apology never came. The congratulations never came. It finally hit me, cold and absolute. My family didn't value me. They never would. This wasn't temporary disappointment. This was who they'd chosen to be. So, I'd build my life without them. 5 years later, Angela landed a marketing manager position at Harbor Lane Home Goods. National retail chain. Corner office in the promotional materials. Impressive title that looked perfect on LinkedIn. Mom and Dad's social media transformed into a shrine. Every post about Angela, her first day photo, team meetings, company events. They shared her updates like press releases, adding their own captions. Our daughter, the marketing manager. At Thanksgiving, Mom pulled out her phone before dessert was even served. Scrolled through Angela's LinkedIn profile like it was a trophy case, tilting the screen toward relatives. Marketing manager, she announced. Oversees national campaigns. Handles major budgets. Dad leaned back in his chair, nodding. That's what happens when you invest in the right child. The words landed like they always did, casual, certain, cutting. Their entire identity had tangled itself in Angela's success. Every promotion she earned became proof they'd made the correct choice. Validation for the punishment they'd inflicted. Meanwhile, I taught 3rd grade at a Title I school on the East Side. Stayed late tutoring kids who couldn't afford reading programs. Paid for classroom supplies out of pocket because the budget never stretched far enough. My students couldn't sound out words in September. By May, they were reading chapter books. The work mattered. Parents thanked me in the pickup line. Principals noticed. Other teachers asked for advice. But at family dinners, when someone asked, "How's work, Jasmine?" the question barely landed before the conversation pivoted. Speaking of work, did Angela tell you about the new campaign? I stopped answering. One Monday morning in October, the posts about Angela stopped. No more proud captions. No more shared LinkedIn updates. No company event photos. Just silence. I noticed it first on Tuesday. Scrolled through Mom's Facebook out of habit, nothing. Checked the family group chat, quiet since Saturday. Wednesday afternoon, Angela's name appeared online. Not in a press release. Not in a company newsletter celebrating her work. In a headline. Marketing manager at Harbor Lane Home Goods terminated following internal investigation into financial misconduct. The article was short, brutal in its brevity. No explanations. No context. Just the facts. Angela's full name, her position, the reason for termination. The kind of article that shows up when future employers search your name. The kind that doesn't disappear. I read it 3 times, my stomach twisting with something I couldn't name. Not satisfaction. Not schadenfreude. Just shock. My phone stayed silent. No one called to tell me. No family group text with explanations or damage control. But I heard about it anyway. A former classmate sent me the link. Isn't this your sister? By Thursday, Mom's friends were calling. Not to congratulate, not to check in. To ask questions wrapped in concern. Is Angela okay? Translation: what happened? Dad stopped going to his usual coffee shop. Neighbors who used to chat in driveways suddenly found reasons to stay inside when his car pulled up. The relatives who'd spent years hearing about your successful daughter went conspicuously quiet. No texts. No calls. No comments on old posts. Angela had been fired. Publicly. Permanently. The damage was searchable. Google her name, and the headline appeared in the first 3 results. LinkedIn showed former marketing manager, now. The internet had made it permanent. For the first time in her life, charm couldn't erase the consequences. Connections couldn't soften the blow. Mom and Dad's money couldn't rewrite the narrative. They tried. I saw the Facebook posts they wrote and deleted. The vague statements about misunderstandings and internal politics. But every attempt made it worse. People screenshot everything. The proof was everywhere. Angela had been their validation. Their trophy. Their justification for every cruel choice they'd made. And now she was their shame. The golden child had fallen, and she'd taken their entire identity with her. That same week, something else happened. Thursday afternoon, I stood in Riverside Elementary's gymnasium surrounded by colleagues, students, and parents whose faces I'd known for years. The air smelled like floor polish and anticipation. A banner hung behind the stage, navy letters on white fabric. Ohio Elementary Teacher of the Year. When they called my name, I felt my knees go weak. Not as consolation. Not as someone's sister. Not as the daughter who'd ruined everything. But as the teacher who'd built literacy programs that actually worked. Who'd stayed late with kids who came to 3rd grade unable to read. Who'd refused to give up when test scores said it was hopeless. Who'd seen potential in students others had written off. Local news cameras flashed. Students rushed the stage, screaming congratulations. Parents I'd worked with for years wiped tears from their faces. My phone started buzzing before I even left the podium. Colleagues. Former students now in high school. Principals from across the district. Community leaders I'd collaborated with on reading initiatives. People who actually knew my work, who'd watched the impact unfold for years. The coverage went live that evening. My photo filled the screen, standing with students holding the award, smiling in a way that felt real. The anchor listed my accomplishments aloud. Literacy rates improved by 40%, after-school tutoring programs, grant-funded reading resources for low-income families. By the time my parents saw the broadcast, the contrast was unavoidable. Angela's name now brought whispers in grocery store aisles. Averted eyes. Awkward silences. Jasmine's name brought congratulations. Applause. Pride. They sat in their living room and watched me on television, praised in the exact way they'd always dreamed of hearing Angela described. The successful daughter. The one who made a difference. The investment that paid off. But this time it wasn't her. It was me. The daughter they'd abandoned. The child they'd punished for one mistake. The investment they'd refused to make. No amount of money could rewrite this moment. No connections could soften it. No excuses could explain it away. They'd backed the wrong daughter. And now everyone, friends, neighbors, relatives, strangers watching the evening news could see it. I didn't gloat. Didn't call them. Didn't post anything on social media. I just let the truth exist, loud and public and undeniable. Sometimes karma doesn't need your help. For 5 days, my parents said nothing. No text. No call. No acknowledgement at all. But I knew they'd seen it. The local news segment had been shared hundreds of times. The school district posted about it. The newspaper ran a feature. My face was everywhere in our small Ohio community. And everywhere they went, people congratulated them. The neighbors they'd bragged to about Angela's marketing career. The church friends who'd heard about USC and national campaigns. The relatives who'd watched them post proud parent content for years. Now those same people stopped them in parking lots, at the grocery store, after Sunday service. Your daughter. Teacher of the Year. You must be so proud. Each time, they had to smile. Had to say, thank you. Had to pretend they'd been supportive all along. Each time, they were forced to confront what they'd spent a decade avoiding. The daughter they'd invested everything in had brought them public disgrace. The daughter they'd punished had brought them honor they didn't deserve. My aunt called me first. Your parents saw the news. Your mom's been really quiet. Translation: she's been confronted with her choices and has nowhere to hide. Cousins sent congratulations with pointed additions. That your parents are thrilled. The subtext was clear. They remembered the favoritism, the missed graduations, the years of erasure. This time, there was no spinning the narrative. No controlling the story. The phone call came on Tuesday evening. Mom's number. I stared at it for 3 rings before answering. Jasmine. Her voice sounded smaller than I remembered. We need to talk. Dad was on the line too. I could hear him breathing in the background. The apology came slowly, awkwardly, heavy with justification. We were so hurt about the box. About losing Mom's voice forever. A pause. We thought we were teaching you responsibility. Preparing you for the real world. Dad cleared his throat. We never meant for it to go on this long. We got stuck. And Angela seemed to be doing so well, and we thought we'd made the right choice, Mom finished. I sat on my couch, phone pressed to my ear, and listened. I didn't interrupt. Didn't correct their revisionist history. Didn't absolve them of what they'd done. When they finished, silence stretched between us. We're sorry, Mom said finally. We're really, truly sorry. I closed my eyes. Part of me, the 15-year-old who'd sobbed in that garage, wanted to hear this so desperately. Wanted to feel relief, vindication, restoration. But the truth settled over me, quiet and certain. They were sorry now because I'd succeeded publicly. Because their justification had crumbled in front of everyone they knew. Because staying silent made them look worse. Not because they'd realized, years ago, that conditional love destroys children. Thank you for calling, I said simply. Not I forgive you. Not it's okay. Not let's start over. Just acknowledgement that they'd finally spoken words they should have said a decade ago. We'd like to see you, Dad tried. Maybe dinner sometime. I'll think about it, I said. Non-committal. Honest. We said goodbye. I hung up and stared at the award on my wall, gleaming in the lamplight. The relationship would never be what it could have been. They'd lost years they couldn't reclaim. Trust they couldn't rebuild. Moments they'd chosen to miss. I didn't win that award for them. I wanted to spite them. And that made all the difference. My peace didn't require their validation anymore. It never had. I just needed time to realize it. Late afternoon sun spills across my classroom, catching dust motes suspended in golden light. Students hunch over books at their desks, pencils scratching against paper in that rhythm I've come to love. Each child carries a story I'm only beginning to understand. Struggles at home, learning gaps no one addressed, the quiet hope that someone will finally see them. I smile, not because anyone told me I should be proud, but because I made myself worthy of it. If you're listening to this and you've ever felt overlooked, punished for mistakes that didn't define you, or left behind by people who should have chosen you, I understand. I've been there. I've lived in that space where love felt conditional and forgiveness seemed reserved for everyone but you. But here's what I learned. Your life isn't defined by who celebrates you. It's defined by the choices you make when no one's watching. The work you do when it's hard, when it's lonely, when it feels like screaming into a void. That's the legacy that matters. Don't wait for permission to build something meaningful. Don't wait for approval to become who you're meant to be. Choose integrity when it costs you. Choose persistence when you're exhausted. Choose compassion, even when you've received none. Choose courage, especially when you're terrified. And most of all, choose yourself. One day, The world might see the value you've carried all along. But you'll know it first. You'll know it always. I lean back in my chair, breathing in the stillness. It's never too late to rise. It's never too late to shine. And when you do, nothing and no one can take it away. If you stayed with me through this story, thank you. If any part of it felt familiar, you're not alone. If you'd like to hear more real family stories like this one, you can subscribe to the channel. And if this story brought up something personal for you, feel free to share it in the comments. I do read them. Thanks for listening.